Hello everyone, happy Saturday. Thank you all so much for coming along to our webinar today. We're going to be talking about teaching English online. Before we get started, let me introduce myself. My name is Mairead and I am based in Galway in the west of Ireland. I've been with the TEFL Academy for 8 years now, and in total I've been involved in TEFL full-time for 20 years. So hopefully I will have some good experiences and good advice to share with you all. I must let you all know I have a bit of a cold at the moment, so if my voice sounds a little strange or if I start coughing, don't worry, I'm fine. It's just a bit of a cold. I just wanted to warn you in advance. So I can see already that we have lots of people in today from Spain, South Africa, New Zealand, France. So as always, it's wonderful to have you all here with us. Now, as new teachers, I'm sure you're all pretty interested in the idea of teaching English online. So in this webinar, we are going to discuss some of the key factors that you ought to consider before embarking on a career as an online English teacher. So we're going to talk about why, the reasons you may choose to teach English online. We'll talk about how to do that, some factors for you to consider, some top tips for managing your online classes. And as always, we'll finish up with a Q&A session where you can type any question you have related to the topic into the chat box, and I will do my best to answer. Okay, let's get going. We have a lot to cover. So the first topic we're going to discuss is why teach English online. Well, I'm sure you are all aware of the dramatic increase in online learning. A lot of this was due to the pandemic, for sure. But even before then, there was a lot of demand for teaching English online. And now there is even more. I found a statistic from 2 years ago. Well, I guess 3 now. The English language learning market is worth over 8.4 billion euro. Can you believe that? And seeing as that is a 2-year-old statistic, I'm sure it's much more than that now. The great joy of teaching English online is its flexibility. Okay, the flexibility it offers you. You can live where you want and you can work from where you want. Okay, it's quite a magical concept. Maybe you want to stay at home where you're from, or maybe you want to travel and see the world, but still, bring in some money to finance it as you do it. Teaching online is perfect for both of those scenarios. Basically, it gives you the opportunity to either stay at home or be a digital nomad. Okay, as long as you have internet, you can work no matter where you are. When it comes to how to do it and how to get started, there are 2 main categories that we would consider. You can either work for a company, for an online school, or you can work as an independent. Now, one thing to clarify, whether you sign up directly with an online school or you decide to work independently, you will be generally working freelance. Okay, so if you're working for school, you will still be responsible for doing all of your own taxes, all of that sort of admin. Okay, so you will be working for a school, but on a freelance basis. So let's discuss that option first, working for a company. Generally, you've got to sign up with an online school. For example, you may have heard of EF, Education First. They are a very, very large online school. You may have heard of companies such as VIP Kids or Bling ABC or Wales English or the iTutor Group. There are so many online schools out there, literally hundreds of them. Okay, so make sure you do your research. If you find a school that you think you like the look of, before approaching them or applying for a job with them, Google them online, see what other teachers have to say about them. Okay, it's really important that you do your research here and find out as much as you can about how the school operates before you apply for the job. if you do decide to go ahead and put in your job application, if the online company school likes you, they will call you for an interview. Okay. There are generally some entry requirements. Okay, like they will ask you to perhaps upload a demo video where you record yourself teaching an imaginary class for maybe 10 or 15 minutes. Yeah, and you would record it as if you were really teaching real life students. So you'll have an interview, you may have to upload a demo lesson. Okay. If you are successful in the interview and if your demo lesson is liked by the company, you will be officially on their books. Okay. Now, two things can happen here once you get on an online school's books. Either they will assign you students in the hours that you choose. Okay, because generally you can choose your availability. Like you can tell the school, I can work from 2 p.m. till 6 p.m. Monday to Friday. Okay, you generally decide your availability. That's a really good thing. So once the school has your availability, they will either assign you students to teach, or students will choose you. Okay, they will find your profile in the online school tutor database and they can sign up with you. Okay, it may happen that the school assigns groups to you and then individual students will request private lessons with you. Okay, that's one way of really bumping up your schedule, filling up your time slots. So the likelihood is you will be teaching a mixture of groups and one-to-one lessons. Okay. Again, though, I must stress that you will choose your own availability. Okay. Then after the lesson, be it a group lesson or a one-to-one lesson, the students will be invited to give feedback on the class. So they won't be doing that to you directly to your face. Yeah. But once the class is ended, they will be asked, how do you rate this class? Yeah. On a scale of 1 to 10, or, choosing options from poor to outstanding. Okay. This is important because sometimes you can actually earn a lot more money in bonuses. Like if you have a high rate of student satisfaction, it can bump up your pay maybe €2 an hour or €3 an hour, on top of what you are already earning. So bonuses like that for student satisfaction, or even bonuses for, always starting your lesson on time, or what are some of the other bonuses? Yeah, being on time, delivering engaging lessons, always, completing the time that you have said that you will complete. There are ways to get these small bonuses that all add up to bump up your hourly rate. So make sure you're aware of all of that before you start teaching with your online school. Make sure you know all of the avenues that you have to boost your hourly salary. I must say it can be a bit frustrating sometimes getting student feedback. A lot of the times it will be excellent, but sometimes you may feel it's been unnecessarily harsh. But, don't take it personally. That's the job. Okay, try not to let any harsh feedback get to you too much. Okay, but I know when I started teaching online, just for the first few weeks, it was a bit confronting getting feedback and ratings after every lesson. So just be prepared for that and let it wash over you. Okay, so that would be one way to get started, working for a company such as EF or VIP Kids, for example. Another route you might take is to be completely independent. All right, so being independent has absolute advantages. Okay, you are basically in control of everything you do. Okay, you set your own pay rate. Maybe an online school is offering €10 an hour, but you think, nah, I'm going to charge 15. Okay, and nobody can stop me. So you can set your own pay rate. Again, you can set your own availability. Of course, you can work as much or as little as you like. You might decide that you only want to teach groups, yeah, or you might decide that you only want to teach one-to-one lessons. Okay, it's entirely up to you. If you do decide to go down the independent route, it can be a little more work initially getting started, because you have to do all of your own marketing. You know, you will set up your LinkedIn profile, maybe advertise on Gumtree, check out all of the classified sites in your area and advertise your services there. You'll need to have a good social media presence to attract new students. It does take a lot of work to get all of that stuff set up initially. So, you need to go in with enthusiasm and you need to be prepared to do a lot of work before you even start teaching. There are websites like Preply or italki. Perhaps you've heard of Preply before. All of those marketplace sites where you advertise yourself basically as a tutor. Maybe you put up a quick video about yourself. You tell the student how much you would charge them. So if you do decide to go down the independent route, do check out all of those sites like Preply, italki, etc. and get yourself out there. The more sites you can advertise on, the more likely you are to get more students more quickly. Again, being independent, you will end up doing all of your own admin. Okay, so things like invoicing, taxes, yeah, all of that is on you. Okay, I think that's probably one of the most daunting things about teaching online. At least it was for me. I was used to working for a bricks and mortar school. They would pay me, they would sort my taxes, they would do everything. But teaching online, it's pretty much all on you. Okay, whether you work for an online school or whether you're independent. You had better get used to dealing with admin. One of the possible downsides to the whole endeavor, I find. So they would be your two options, and which one you choose is entirely up to you. I know a lot of teachers who started out working for a school, an online school, because that gave them some training, it gave them some sort of grounding in teaching. It provided materials for the classes. And then once they had experience in that, then they felt more confident to launch themselves as an independent tutor. But there is no right or wrong way. You can choose whichever one suits your circumstances best. So here are some things to think about then before you launch yourself as an online teacher, either with a company or independently. Think about time zones. For example, when I was working for an online school, I was in Ireland, but a lot of my students were based in China and in Japan. Okay, so there is I think a 9 or 10 or even 11-hour time difference there. Okay, so you've got to factor that into your availability times. So for example, maybe there's a time that's convenient for you in your country, but actually that would be the middle of the night for the students in the country that you would be teaching. So, you will have to be flexible if you are focusing on teaching students from countries that are really far away from yours. Another thing, visas and documentation. Okay, it won't be an issue if you're staying in your own home country to teach online. But if you do prefer to, travel around and teach as you go, it is definitely something to bear in mind. It can be a lot of work getting through that red tape of visas, work permits, etc. Cost of living is another thing that you should certainly bear in mind. All of us love the idea of traveling around the world to these marvelous countries. But if you're spending time in an expensive country, you may find that you're not actually making enough during your work to sustain you. So it's fine if you're just spending short amount of time in different places. But if you are hoping to base yourself in a country with a higher cost of living, make sure that you will actually be earning enough to sustain yourself long term. Another thing to bear in mind if you do want to teach while you travel, think about all that stuff you have, all your luggage, okay? And then add in your laptop or your computer equipment, okay? You know, things you need to do your job day to day. You know, it can get quite frustrating if you're considering moving very often, just constantly packing up your stuff, taking it with you. It's just something to bear in mind, the practicalities of moving around. Again, not an issue if you work from home where you are from and where all your stuff is. Of course, a massive thing to bear in mind is connectivity. Okay, if you have signed up to an online school, or if you're working independently and you have a full schedule of classes for the next month, you need to know that you will have a strong internet connection. Okay, that is a non-negotiable. And, you know, it can require a degree of forward planning if you are going to be on the move. Okay, so before you go anywhere, you need to know where you're going to teach your next class from. Okay, you also need a quiet place. All right, free of distractions, free of a lot of background noise. Again, when you're working from home, that's pretty easy, right? But if you are planning on moving and traveling as you teach, again, it is something you will need to factor in. Okay, find a place that you know you can go to teach your classes. So, you know, there are a lot of practical concerns when it comes to teaching English online. Okay, it's not quite as easy as open up your laptop and away you go. Okay, so do keep an eye or keep one part of your brain on the practicalities at all times. Now, let's move on to looking at some tips for teaching English online. Firstly, you've got to choose a platform and tools. So by platform, we mean just how you are going to teach or where you are going to teach your lessons. Okay, if you sign up for an online school, they will already have their own platform. So it will just be a matter of logging in, going to their virtual classroom and doing the job. Okay, if you decide to go down the independent route, there are different platforms. You will be the one choosing what you use. For example, Google Classroom, Moodle, Canvas. Now, Edmodo, I believe, has actually closed down recently. So maybe not Edmodo, okay, but Blackboard, etc. These are all examples of LMS. LMS stands for Learner Management System. And it is just basically an online virtual classroom and system that will help you to plan your lessons, deliver your lessons, you know, keep records of your students, etc. A lot of independent teachers, they will use Zoom or Skype or Google Meet or even Microsoft Teams. Okay, we all know the popularity that Zoom experienced, especially during COVID, and it is still incredibly popular for online teachers as a way of delivering their lessons. In terms of tools you can use, like online resource tools, I'm sure a lot of you have heard of Canva. You know, Canva is amazing for making materials, for making worksheets, yeah, for making stuff look amazing. For getting creative with your materials. You could use Kahoot, which is an online quiz platform, yeah, that you can make really fun interactive quizzes for your students to do online. Quizlet, really fun. You can make flashcards, you can make games, yeah. Apps like Padlet. If you haven't heard of Padlet, you should really check it out. It's like a virtual notice board. So you might want to make a Padlet for each individual class, put lots of fun tasks on there, put some listenings, some videos, and as you deliver your class, students can go over and back to Padlet and listen to what you want them to listen to. They can contribute their own ideas to the Padlet. Yeah, it's a great tool. Even if you're not teaching online, even if you're teaching in a face-to-face class, a face-to-face school, you know, Padlet is just a wonderful tool. So if you do end up teaching online, do your best to use as many different resources as you can. Yeah, give that variety and that engagement to your students. In terms of setting up your teaching environment, remember before we talked about getting the practicalities sorted before you teach? Well, here are some more of those practicalities. Obviously, your laptop or PC is the first thing that you need to sort. Okay, try to get as good a one as you can. If you can't afford like a newer model than the one you have, which, I've had the same laptop for 5 years now, make sure that you really look after your equipment. Okay, so, try to make sure that you have a really good virus scanner or, good antivirus software. Try to keep it cleaned up. Try not to download any dodgy links. Your laptop or your PC is essentially your place of work. So really look after it, because if anything happens, we're in trouble. Consider getting insurance if you can. Yeah. Or ideally, try to have a backup machine that you can use. I know financially that can be really difficult. So if you can't do that right now or in the short term, think of it as a future goal. Okay. I want a backup machine, or I want to update my equipment. You've got to have a fast internet connection. Okay. That is pretty much a non-negotiable, especially if you are going to be teaching groups. If you're going to be using lots of audio, lots of video, and chances are you will. Okay. So please make sure that you have the fastest internet connection that you can get. That might involve plugging in your computer directly to your modem. It might involve getting Wi-Fi booster signals that you can plug in around the house. Yeah, just try to ensure that your Wi-Fi is as fast and as reliable as possible. If you sign up for an online school, they will often require you to do a speed test to check your internet connection. So be prepared for that too. A lot of schools will say, we can't take you on unless you have X upload speed and Y download speed. Okay, they will make you do a test, screenshot the speeds, and send it back to them. Consider your equipment, okay, webcams and headsets. If you are going into teaching online full-time, it is well worth investing in a really good webcam and a really good headset. Okay, if possible, get the headsets with the headphones and the microphone. Like, get a good headset. I mean, all of them have headsets and microphones, but try to get a good quality one that will really give clarity to what you're saying and what you're hearing. On an even more practical level, try to get a comfortable chair. Okay, definitely invest in a good office chair. Okay, because you will be sitting down for long stretches every day. So you don't want to do your back any injuries by spending the whole time on an unsuitable chair. Consider the background you're going to use. Okay, you might not want your students seeing your living room, for example, or you might not want them to see your personal photos in the background. So consider where you're going to station yourself. And apart from that, just make sure you have a nice big desk to leave all of your stuff around you. Okay, your notes, maybe your lesson plans, maybe teaching material, maybe you have some props that you want to use during the class. Your students won't be able to see your desk, yeah, but make sure you have a nice big one with everything to hand around you. Moving away a little from the practicalities, another thing to consider very, very carefully is privacy and safety online. Okay, it's really important that you try to keep up to date with GDPR. For example, are you keeping records of your students' names? Yeah, if so, you need to know, how long can you keep them for, how you need to store them, and exactly what you can use them for. If you're working for an online school, hopefully they will have all of this taken care of for you. Okay, they will store the records, they will dispose of them as necessary, etc. Also, be mindful that when we're asking students to disclose personal data, like where they're from or who they live with, it's all innocent questions, but some students just might not feel comfortable disclosing all of that information. So be mindful, okay, of students' own necessity for privacy. The same goes for you, okay? You don't want to be telling people exactly where you live. Yeah, you don't want to be giving them like your date of birth and stuff. I mean, you might, but again, you might not. So just be mindful. We all know what the internet is like these days. So be mindful of how you divulge and protect personal data. The same goes with sharing video and photos. Okay, we will do it with the best of intentions, I'm sure, but try not to press students to do it. Okay, they may not feel comfortable sharing photos and videos, and especially if you're teaching young learners, okay, we do not want to go down the route of asking them for photos, videos, etc. Okay, I'm sure you can understand why. Another thing that you can certainly be aware of and try to manage is the risk of bullying and, unsociable behavior online. Now, of course, with email, with private messaging, etc., there can be a lot of bullying that can go on that you don't even know about. Okay, between your students, not necessarily to you. Okay, hopefully. But either way, be aware. Make sure your students are happy. If they look anxious about anything, sad about anything, if you see them constantly checking their phones or the chat box, okay, maybe see if you can find out what's wrong, know that they can tell you anything, any troubles they're having, etc. It might not happen that often, but it's just something to be aware of and to keep an eye on. In terms of your day-to-day teaching, do try to create a routine in your classes, okay? Always start off the same way and always end the same way, okay? Try to follow the same order of things. Creating a routine helps students feel more grounded in their virtual atmosphere, okay? It helps them feel safer, it helps them feel more confident. If they know how things are going to go, yeah, it will ease anxiety a lot. It will help them to focus and concentrate on what's going on. Try to make your instructions very fast and very simple. Okay, in a face-to-face environment, when we're giving instructions, we can depend a lot on our body language. Like we can use our hands. We can, show them physically with a book and a worksheet what they're doing. Online, we are a bit more restricted in that they can usually only see our faces, right? So do try to make your instructions fast and simple as possible. You can still check that students have understood. You should still check. But yeah, really focus on getting your instructions to the point. Do all of the usual things you'd always do. Do your warmers. Tell students what the objectives of the lesson are. A nice little WALT section at the beginning can, really settle students in. WALT stands for What Are We Learning Today? And it's just basically where you tell them, okay, today we're going to focus on animals that live in the zoo. Okay, we're going to talk about what they are, what they eat, and what they like doing. Okay, so, bring students on the journey with you. Let them know what's ahead. At the end of the classroom, set homework if that is something that you have to do or you choose to do, and always end the lesson the same way with a summary of what they have learned today. Okay, you can revisit the WALT that you did at the beginning. So while the content of the lesson may change, like in the main body of it, you will always be starting the same way and always ending the same way. I think this is especially important if you're teaching young learners. Okay, they definitely need that stability. They need to know what's coming up in order to stay focused and secure. Let's talk a little more about delivering instructions. The good thing about working online is that you have your chat box. Okay, so when you are giving your instructions, you're verbally delivering the instructions, you can also just type them into the chat box in an even more concise way. Okay, that way, even if the students don't understand your verbal instructions, they can look down at the chat box and still know what to do. So do make the most of the chat box for written prompts and written instructions. I always like to, if I'm only giving verbal instructions, I always like to ask my students to type yes in the chat box if they have understood, or type understood in the chat box if they have understood. It's just a nice tool that can further support your instruction giving. Simultaneous feedback. So again, you can use the chat box, have you understood? Do you need any help? If you have any questions, you can ask me over your microphone, or you can ask in the chat box. Okay. The same thing, if you notice that maybe a student is looking puzzled, you might send them a private message and say, oh, are you sure you understand? Is everything okay? Yeah. So, keep in touch with your students using the chat box. You can also use the chat box to share materials, links, etc. Okay, so you might drop the link to a Padlet, or you might drop the link to a worksheet. Okay, so yeah, the chat box is an amazing tool for us to use when delivering instructions and sharing materials and feedback. Okay, so just to finish up, let's talk briefly about classroom management, because I know that's what a lot of you are probably wondering about. Well, the good news is that in a lot of ways, classroom management of an online class is a lot easier to manage than physical classes. Okay, you don't have the same noise, the same chaos. Okay, there is no background chatting going on, which is lovely. If there is a bit of noise or chaos, or students talking out of turn, you can mute them. The joy of the mute button. Normally, when you're looking at your class list, if maybe they're using webcams, maybe they're not, it depends. Normally each student will have a mute option. So if, for example, you have a young learner who just won't stop singing and laughing, mute him or her. Okay, and don't feel bad about doing that. Okay, it doesn't mean that you need to mute them for the entire class, but absolutely, if it's necessary, you press that button. And again, you can kind of keep in touch with everyone via the chat box. Okay, and importantly, the students can ask you any questions that they have. And if you're using the private message function, nobody else knows that you're talking to them or they're talking to you. Okay, so yeah, classroom management is definitely not as big an issue as it would generally be in a face-to-face class. One final word on student engagement. Well, while classroom management is a lot easier, student engagement can be a bit more difficult when we're doing classes online. Okay, it's just hard to engage on a screen sometimes. It's hard to build that relationship with your students. So that means that you need to make even more of an effort to grab everybody's attention. Okay, you've got to be your own personality, but maximized. Okay, especially if you're teaching young learners. Okay, be larger than life. Okay, you've got to exude that confidence through the screen. Okay, you've got to make a real effort to be, enthusiastic, giving it your all. It can sometimes almost be like a performance. But once you start teaching, you genuinely do want to engage your students. You want to reach them somehow. So you'll find yourself doing it without even thinking about it, I'm sure. When it comes to asking your students questions, try to get them involved as much as possible. All right. One way to do this is to use the chat box. Okay, you might say, okay, Luis, I'm asking you a question next, get ready. All right. Or if Anna has answered a question, you can say, okay, thank you, Anna. And then after a few seconds, type in the chat box, oh, great answer, Anna, thank you for that. Okay, so use the chat box for praise, for letting them know what's coming next. A really nice idea that tends to keep especially young learners on their toes is the idea of randomizing and using a spinner. So there are lots of these virtual spinners online that you can fill in with your students' names. Wheelofnames.com is a good one. So you can put that on your screen, hit the button, and the spinner will spin and stop at a random student. And then that student can answer the question. So that's a really fun way of keeping all of your students engaged, because they never know when they're going to be asked. I may not do it all the time, but from time to time, it's a lot of fun, at least once during a lesson. Finally, don't be afraid of silence. Okay, silence is a wonderful thing. Don't feel like you have to be constantly filling the space, okay, with chatter, with tasks, with whatever. Okay, take the opportunity during maybe a reading task or a grammar task, just have silence. Okay, just let the silence happen. Students need it to process what's going on. We don't want incredibly long stretches of silence either, because we don't want our students to switch off. But, there is nothing wrong with silence when used appropriately. Okay, and with that said, I am going to be silent for a few minutes. It is your turn to ask me any questions you may have about teaching online. Pop them in the chat box and we will do our best to answer. While you are thinking of your questions, I'm going to read down through the comments and see if any early questions have come in. Okay, so take a moment, type your answers or type your questions in the chat box. We have lots of familiar names here today, and also some new names I haven't seen before, so welcome to all of the newbies. Okay, so Karen, could someone write in the chat box the 3 schools she referenced briefly? I wrote down EF and something kids, but I didn't catch them all. Did anyone catch them? Yes, Karen, I mentioned a couple of them. I mentioned EF, you're right. I mentioned VIP Kids, VIP Kids. I mentioned Bling ABC, I think. I mentioned Wales English. I think that was it. So that is by no means a recommendation of any of those schools, or a non-recommendation of those schools, nor is it an exhaustive list of schools. They were just the first few that popped into my mind. And then for teaching independently, Preply is a good marketplace site, or the other one is italki or italki. I'm never sure how to pronounce it. So yeah, just some suggestions, but not a recommendation or a non-recommendation, if that makes sense. I'm always conscious not to recommend any school in particular, unless I've worked for them. Okay, I think it's up to you all to do your research and find something that you think would fit your circumstances. All right. Yes, Eric, you make an excellent point. The videos are recorded and archived. If you miss anything, you can review the video at a later date. So all of these webinars will be posted on our YouTube channel. Okay, so go to YouTube, type in the TEFL Academy, and you will see dozens and dozens and dozens and dozens of webinars. Okay, so usually the webinar that is delivered on Saturday will be uploaded by the following Tuesday. Okay. Okay, so hello Asha. What was the name of the spinner mentioned? I think I mentioned wheelofnames.com. But again, there are tons of them out there. Like if you just type in online spinner, Yeah, you will find tons and tons of options. Okay. So, hello, Cole. How hard is it to get a job online for the first time without having a degree? Cole, not difficult. Not difficult at all. I think normally schools tend to ask for a degree if they need to organize a visa and a work permit for you. Okay. And, that doesn't tend to be the case when you're teaching online. So it's not to say that no schools require degrees for online teaching, but, it is actually quite easy to get started online without a degree. Okay. Just make sure, when you're looking for jobs that you read the jobs requirements carefully. But yeah, it's not difficult. Not at all. Such is the demand for English teachers. All right. Thank you, Cole. So, hello, Shandra. As an online teacher, are you expected to remove facial piercings regarding little ones and teenagers, general purposes of being professional? I guess, Shandra, it depends on the school you're working for. Like, your online school may have a policy for this, they may not. Okay, if you're working independently, it's up to you. Okay, so I would say, go with your gut on this one. Or if you're working for an online school, check their policy. Okay, but yeah, totally up to you. And I guess as well, the country that the students are in, like maybe they would be more or less inclined towards facial piercings, etc. But yeah, you can trust your gut on that one, I think, or follow your school's policy if there is one. Okay, so hello, George. When using a video, text, and listening or teaching a lesson online, should we stream it or do we use a different method? Also, should we show activity questions on the screen before, after reading or listening? Yeah, normally, George, we would be streaming them. So if you are working for an online school that provides all of the materials, they will just have the links embedded in the material. So it'll be just a matter of clicking it. If you're streaming it, yeah, you can just have it set up yourself and, press play when the time comes. Okay. So yeah, streaming, no problem. Should we show activity questions on the screen before or after? Well, ideally, George, whether it's face-to-face teaching or online, we always want to give the questions before. Okay, so that, it gives students a chance to prepare for what they're going to listen to. And, it takes some of the mental burden away from them. Okay, so yeah, always give them the questions in advance. You can also put them up afterwards for correction, for sure. Okay, so hello, Shanukas. I hope I pronounced your name. I'm almost certain I didn't. Any tips or sites for what the office should look like? Any musts or don'ts when it comes to this? I would say, Shanukas, try not to have it too cluttered or too colorful or too distracting. Okay, try to keep it as neutral as you can. Also, bear in mind, always bear in mind what students can see in the background. Okay, you might not necessarily want them seeing all of your stuff in the background or your personal pictures, etc. So yeah, just try to keep it as non-distracting as you can. Okay, within reason. I mean, if you're working from home, it is still your home. So, we're not expecting like a clinical white background. Okay, but yeah, just try to keep it as clean and non-distracting as you can. All right. Okay, thank you, Shanikas. So hello, Poke. Are writing lessons worth doing in an online environment? Yeah, absolutely. Writing is a super important skill. Students do need to be able to do it, and it's really good practice for spelling, grammar, punctuation, etc. What I would say, Poke, is with writing, we tend to do all of the setup stuff in the actual class, okay? Like we'll go through structure, maybe. We'll go through genre features. We'll teach some useful language. Okay, we'll maybe examine a model text. Okay, we'll put together a plan. But the actual writing part, we tend to give for homework. Because, if students only have maybe 2 hours of class a week, they don't want to spend 1 hour of that writing in silence while the webcam is looking at them. Okay, so with writing, absolutely do it, but focus on all of the setup writing stuff in the class, and then they can do the actual writing themselves for homework. Okay, typically then they would email you the finished product. Okay, so if, for example, you wanted them to write a review of a new movie or a new book, okay, you would, study a model text in class with them. You would talk about the features of the text. You would maybe point out some useful language. You would put together a plan, brainstorming ideas. All of that you would do together, because that's all quite interactive stuff. Yeah, but then they would do the actual writing for homework. All right. So thank you, Puck. Hopefully that helps. But yeah, don't ignore writing. It's super important. Okay. Hello, Anna. How long lesson is most convenient for students to stay focused? Gosh, Anna, I'm not entirely sure. But I would say the younger the student, the shorter the lesson should be. So if you're teaching, for example, 5 and 6 year olds, 20 minutes would probably be plenty. Whereas if you're teaching, older teenagers or adults, you could stretch that maybe to an hour, 90 minutes. I don't think there's any hard or fast rule here. But yeah, like if you're working for an online school, they will have the time slots already fixed, so you won't really have a choice. Okay, but if you're working independently, I would say definitely the shorter the better for the young learners with the shorter attention spans, and then you can increase it depending on how much your students can take. All right, so thank you, Anna. Student email, hello, research is needed for both independent and company, for sure, but which can be seen as more beneficial in the long term of the teaching field? Oh, well, I guess student email, it kind of depends on what your own goals are when it comes to online teaching. A lot of people much prefer the stability of a company. They like knowing that they will work X amount of hours, they will get paid at the end of the month. The material will be provided, the students will be provided. A lot of people love and need that stability. Okay, but on the other hand, other teachers may feel a little stifled in that environment, like they're ready to branch out and do their own thing, make their own materials, raise their rates. So I guess beneficial depends really on what your goals are. Okay, like what would be most beneficial for you. Okay. I know that's not a definitive answer by any means, but it really does depend on you, on the individual teacher, and what they want to achieve in their career. Okay, so hello, Gian. How hard is it to find a job without a degree? So I think we talked about this earlier, Gian. And I told the previous student who asked this question that it's actually much easier than you would imagine. Okay, there are lots of jobs out there for non-degree English teachers online. Again, just check out the job requirements, okay, for every job you find, and they will tell you there what they need or not. I don't know if you are all aware, but the TEFL Academy website has a jobs board. And on that jobs board, you can search degree required or non-degree required, or degree not required. Okay, so you can use that filter for extra clarity. We also have a section like dedicated to online jobs. So do hop along to the TEFL Academy jobs board, and you will see all of the options out there. Okay, so hello, Kaiten. Thanks for all the advice. You are so welcome. What are some of the common mistakes new teachers make that are embarrassing that we can avoid? Oh gosh, Kaiten, you will never avoid all the embarrassing mistakes. We all make them. I would say for teaching online, The most embarrassing thing is like when you're talking and you don't realize that you've muted yourself, or you're asking students questions and you've forgotten that you have muted them. Okay. Or you think you are finished the lesson and you forget to turn off your webcam and you do something embarrassing. Okay. So like all of the online embarrassing things are generally related to microphone and webcam. Okay. So, just try to keep those things under control and you will avoid a ton of embarrassing things. Other things could just be like your tech dying on you in the middle of lessons and you just disappear and students don't know what happened. Okay. Or you have some sort of tech meltdown. I would say actually, Caton, you know what? The biggest thing I learned in my first couple of weeks teaching was always have my laptop turned on and ready to go way before the lesson starts. I remember one time I looked at my watch, I said, okay, my lesson's starting in 5 minutes. I'd better turn on my computer. And my computer launched into the longest update in the history of the world. And I just could not, I missed my class because my laptop was updating. Okay, totally my own fault. I left it too late, okay, to get everything set up. So switch on your laptop like an hour or 30 minutes before your class, get everything set up, and then go off and have your cup of tea and chill until the lesson time comes around. But yeah, that would be my advice. Thank you, Caden. Okay, hello, Bathsheba. Oh, what a wonderful name from my favorite novel. What a beautiful name, Bathsheba. If we don't have any previous teaching experience, would that stop us from being able to sign up on these platforms or hinder us? Absolutely not, Bathsheba. No, absolutely not. But do be honest about your level of experience. You don't have to say that you're new, but on the flip side, don't claim that you're experienced. Okay, just say I am an enthusiastic teacher, really looking forward to meeting all of my future students. Okay, so you don't have to advertise that you're new, but don't lie and say you're experienced when you're not. If you can give a really enthusiastic profile impression, okay, like really get across your personality, that you're ready to help, you're dynamic, you're ready to help them learn English. That will be the main thing. I find the students react much more strongly to personality and the impression of your profile or your demo lesson gives than your experience. So yeah, do not let that dissuade you at all. Go for it. Okay. So, hello, Hafisa. What methods does one use to assess or measure student understanding in an online classroom? Hafisa, exactly the same, pretty much, as in a face-to-face classroom. Okay, so, you'll still be giving them tasks and comprehension questions and maybe some grammar tasks. If they're doing speaking tasks, you'll be popping in and out listening to them. You'll be probably giving them some tests, maybe some multiple choice questions. So yeah, exactly the same. There is no real difference in measuring comprehension. Okay, so don't worry about that. You will know if, for example, if they can't do a task or if they get all the questions wrong, you know that they haven't understood, just as you would in a face-to-face classroom. Okay, so thank you, Hafisa. All right, so hello, Caton again. Is it safe to give your personal bank account details, or is it best to use PayPal or similar? And should you base your rate on your own country standard rate or the country of your students? Oh, such good questions, Caton. Well, if you are working for a school, for an online school, they will typically have their own systems for payment. So, some of them may ask for your bank account and pay directly. Others may pay through a different system, like Revolut or PayPal. So yeah, it depends. Whatever the online school wants, basically, is what you have to adhere to. If you're teaching as an independent, it's totally up to you. Personally, I would prefer the anonymity of PayPal or Revolut. I wouldn't feel comfortable giving my bank account details, for example, to private students. But yeah, it's definitely something for you to consider, and make sure that you feel comfortable with the payment system. Okay, so hello George. I've noticed many schools state being a native English speaker as a requirement. Oh, I know, George. It's horrible. I can't believe it's still a thing. Is there a way for a non-native speaker to land these jobs? Yes, like stating work experience or anything else. Yes, George, absolutely. I've noticed a lot recently that schools are really stepping away from the native speaker thing, which is incredibly positive. None of us want to participate in a discriminatory system that would value native speakers over proficient speakers from other countries, non-English speaking countries. So I would say, George, just keep applying. Absolutely. If you can, and you see jobs advertising native speaker, email them and say, why? Okay, what is your reasoning for this? Are you aware that this is discriminatory? Okay, call them out on it, because it's really not acceptable, I think, in this day and age. And you will notice that a lot of online schools now, okay, they're not stating the native speaker as a requirement, or they're not stating being a native speaker. They're just stating proficient speakers. Okay, and that's as it should be. Okay. Yeah, it really annoys me, George, to see the native speaker. I always call them out on LinkedIn. Okay, so yeah, keep trying, George. There is a lot of work out there. Okay. So hello, Frederica. Is there any book in particular that you would recommend for this topic? No, Frederica, honestly. I don't think I've ever read like an exclusively online teaching focused book, methodology book. It's not to say that they don't exist. You can definitely look that up, but I'm afraid I can't recommend any myself. Sorry, but I must look into it too. It sounds like that would be interesting. So hello, Andrew. How long is mute time for unacceptable student behavior if bad the entire lesson? Well, Andrew, I don't think there's any real standard for this. But, I always believe in giving students a chance to improve. So, if I do mute them, I'll only mute them for a short time and say, okay, you're coming back in 2 minutes. Okay, but I must warn you, if you continue the behavior, I am going to mute you again. So, I would prefer to mute them for short times repeatedly, rather than just block them for one big long time. Because, we always want to give them a chance to improve, right? We don't want to just give up on them after one infringement. You can also, if you're teaching for an online school, Andrew, you can also ask what their policy is on that. Okay, so hello, Elena. How to keep balance between using the chat box and speaking, delivering instructions. Chat could help reduce TTT. At the same time, it could cause confusion or decrease students' involvement. How to manage it? Yeah, great points, Elena. Absolutely. So I would deliver the instructions verbally, normally. Yeah, and then once I had checked that they understood and let them start the task, then I would write a quick summary of the instructions in the chat box. Okay, I wouldn't try to do both together, because I would just confuse myself terribly. All right, thank you for the question, Elena. So, hello, it's Magic. Great name for a new teacher. Would you suggest teaching groups or individual students first? Gosh, pros and cons to both. It's Magic. I would say do whatever you get. Okay, just take whatever the school offers you. Or, if you advertise, whatever you get back first. There are pros and cons to doing both. But, both will help you with the other, if that makes sense. So, yeah, I don't think anything is better or worse on balance. Okay. Good. Okay, do we have any more? Let's see. So Deepa, hello. Degree in which stream? So normally Deepa, if a school asks for a degree, they don't really care what it's in. Okay, it could be in science, it could be in maths, it could be in geography, anything. Okay, as I said, the degree thing just tends to be about bureaucracy. Okay, work permits, visas, etc. All right. So everyone, oh my goodness, our time is up. Okay, that went so quickly. So thank you all so much for coming along. I see that you are also thanking me, so it's just a big mutual thank you fest. You've asked some amazing questions. I wish we had longer, but we don't. So if I haven't managed to answer your question, please send us a ticket to tutor support. Okay, when you go online to the online course, you will see the option to open a ticket. So yeah, any questions at all, pop them along to tutor support and we will be only too happy to help. Two last things before I go. I'd like to remind you that previous webinars are all available on our YouTube site. Okay, all of them are there. They're going back years. There are several teaching online webinars. Okay, so, check them out. And also, it would be great if we could get your feedback on this webinar. Because as I say, every time I give a webinar, every teacher is looking to improve, right? Every school is looking to improve. So any feedback you can offer on this webinar would be very, very highly appreciated. I'm also going to put the link in the chat box for ease of access. Oops. Oh, talk about tech issues. How have I managed to mess up the chat box? My mouse has frozen. Oh, isn't it always the way? Okay, I'm going to post this incomplete link and I'm going to try again. Survey monkey. .co.uk //TTA live. My goodness, guys, my chat box is being incredibly strange. It must know that we're doing the online one and it wants to show me up with an embarrassing mistake. All right, everyone. That's it for now. Thank you all so much for coming along and I hope to see you soon. All right. Bye-bye, everyone.